Good afternoon, Saitlanders. How are you? We trust that all is well. I'm smiling to myself because I'm just thinking about the many and various things that I could say in this video about the events in Ukraine, Russia, USA, politicians, hypocrisy, all the nonsense that's going on. It's really quite incredible. Some of it is absurd, and hence the smile. I want to read you something. Let me just put it over here. This is by Dmitry Medvedev. Now, I think I've been through this in a previous video with you guys. We're going to get on to another one shortly. Dmitry Medvedev is the former president of Russia, who has also been the prime minister of Russia under Vladimir Putin, when Vladimir Putin has been the president, who is now the deputy head of the National Security Council of the Russian Federation, which means he runs the National Security Council. Vlad is nominally in charge, he's the main guy, but in practice he's not running it on a day-to-day basis. And this guy's gotten wilder and wilder and wilder over time. But he's always been known as a serious guy, Dmitry Medvedev. He was responsible for saying quite a long time ago that it seemed to him as if the four horses of the apocalypse were already galloping over the world. And he was referring to COVID, impending global famine or threatening global famine, the war, which threatens to become much bigger. Indeed, I'll digress and tell you that the head of Wagner, the private military company, like the US had Blackwater in Afghanistan and Iraq, a very big mercenary organization, let's call it what it is. The word mercenary has worked for centuries. So Russia has this Wagner group. The guy's name is Prigozhin, Yevgeny Prigozhin, recently said that anybody who signs up to Wagner now to work as a mercenary in Ukraine alongside Russia's standard army forces, as Blackwater, as a private company, operated alongside US and NATO forces in Afghanistan and Iraq. Anybody who signs up now will be made an officer in World War III. This is how these guys are talking. I beg your pardon. So he recently said that Britain is going to, will remain Russia's eternal enemy. And their island will go into the deep sea from the waves created by the newest system of Russian weapons, which is a clear allusion to Russia's new nuclear-powered and nuclear war-headed, nuclear-tipped, if you like, torpedo. So a torpedo that has a range of 10,000 miles and indefinite time period. In other words, if it hasn't driven for 10,000 miles or swum for 10,000 miles, and it goes to the shore, to the bottom, which it can be made to do by remote control, it can sit there for however long. But if it's swimming, if it's flying through the water, it can go for 10,000 miles at 100 kilometers an hour, 60 miles an hour, 96 kilometers an hour. It's 18 meters long, and it has a warhead that is something like, obviously nobody knows for certain, but the boffins in the West, the boffins in NATO, the boffins in Europe and the USA in the field of torpedo technology have been able to calculate how big does the propulsion system have to be, and how big are the batteries, and how big is the reactor, and what, which leaves a certain amount of space over for the warhead, given that the dimensions are known. And the warhead is something like 200 times more powerful than the Hiroshima atomic bomb. This phenomenal thing's purpose is to create tsunamis offshore in what's called the littoral of a country. So that's the region just offshore, off the coast, where the undersea topography is shallowest, to explode, creating a tsunami that goes over the country. And we know that the Belgorod submarine, which was the first and at the time only, there's now a second that's been launched, that could take these enormous torpedoes of 18 meters long, put to sea, and apparently jettisoned the torpedoes somewhere. Nobody's dead certain, but we know a few things. It put to sea. It disappeared. It vanished, as certain NATO sources said. It returned to harbor, and intelligence seems to suggest, or does suggest, that the waterline of the vessel has changed. In other words, it jettisoned a huge amount of its cargo, many tons, presumably the 6 torpedoes that it was believed to be carrying. Nobody knows for absolute certain. So those torpedoes are lying somewhere, apparently, lying somewhere on the seafloor, waiting to be told to swim to the coast of some other country and blow up and deluge the country, inundate it. So that's Dmitry Medvedev, the mission that he's on. Now, as you know, 2 nights ago, there was an assassination attempt upon Vladimir Putin. Apparently. What we know for sure is that there are videos purporting to show the destruction by local air defenses of drones attacking the Kremlin. And we also know that about a week ago, I forget the exact day, 7, 8, 9 days ago, we saw frantic reports of Vladimir Putin being shuttled in the middle of the night. Shuttled from one place to another at midnight, I think it was 2 in the morning. So there have been these 2 recent occasions on which there may have been assassination attempts upon the life of Vladimir Putin. Anyway, we hear now, this video will probably only be posted tomorrow, on Thursday the 4th of May 2023, that Dmitry Medvedev's reaction to that is, they leave us no choice but to assassinate Volodymyr Zelensky. And, you know, many of you will know Jurek Drent, Mr. Miller's great friend. Have been in the cause for a long time together. Jurek Drent is very loyal to Mr. Miller. A good man, a religious man. Jurek Drent was saying to me this morning that it's apparent that that all of these peculiar events, we're talking now about the assassination attempts, are intended to provoke Russia in such a way that the West can say that we are the victims. we're talking about the assassination attempts. We're talking about any retaliation that Russia might have offered to the destruction of the pipelines Nord Stream 1 and 2, to how Russia might have reacted to blowing up of the Kerch Bridge between mainland Russia and Crimea. We're talking about Russian response or reaction to the discovery of the many. I read a very, very good article the other day that suggested it was as many as 43 or 46 bioweapons laboratories that the European Union, NATO, and the USA established on Ukrainian soil at the Russian borders. So throughout Ukraine, but almost all of them very near to Russia's borders. We provoke. When you retaliate, we say, it's not fair. Look what he's doing to me, mommy. You know what I mean? This stereotype. The man who cries out as he strikes you. The very point of this video is to impress upon you how serious things have become. I would say, given the amount of research I do, so I'm a layman, I'm not qualified to have a qualified opinion, but given the amount of attention that I pay to these matters, at Mr. Miller's behest, it is my opinion that the assassination attempts or apparent assassination attempts of Vladimir Putin never stood much chance of success. He is probably not sleeping on the third floor of the Kremlin. You know, the Kremlin is originally a religious complex of monasteries and churches, many churches, not just one, that has since Soviet times been, or in fact, I think perhaps prior to Soviet times, been the seat of government of Russia and the Soviet Union's most senior leaders. He probably wasn't sleeping on the third floor in an old monk's cell with the window open, or perhaps standing there in the evening breeze, 2 o'clock in the morning, struggling to sleep, taking a few deep breaths and a Somnol tablet. In other words, those attempts on his life were at best token. The likelihood that they were ever going to reach him is very slight, or was very, very slight. The chances that he was in such a convenient location, you know, like when you book into a hotel, and sometimes they'll say to you, would you rather have a sea view or a view of the, you know, whatever? I'll take the sea view. Look out over the beach, Christmas Day, at the people there. Everybody can see you looking down at them. That was not ever going to be the case. And the chances that, regardless of where he was sleeping, that NATO would know it is also very, very, very slim. Yeah, you have agents and spies and all sorts of means. But he's probably able to outwit those, meaning that the guys around him, his security dudes, his own agents, his own top-class, highly trained guys, probably have a fairly watertight system of ensuring that his whereabouts are not always known and are pretty well concealed and are pretty safe and out of the way and so on. Therefore, I would say that the sole purpose of the two events, we don't know what happened in the first, of roughly a week ago. Why he raced away, was shuttled away, huge convoy, sirens, lights, the whole lot. But whatever may have happened then, allegedly, it was a first assassination attempt. Or the first of this week. And the one of 2 nights ago, where the two drones were shot down, were provocations. The West desperately endeavoring to get him to do something rash in response, so that they could play the victim and justify a reprisal. Like with the weapons of mass destruction in the Iraq invasion, and as with the destruction of the World Trade Center by Mossad. You know the story of the dancing Israelis who admitted on Israeli television, and you can find the video yourselves without too much difficulty, that they were Mossad agents, that Mossad knew about the destruction of the World Trade Center, and they recorded it. And then they celebrated very much, great celebrations, as they were caught by a certain woman, and it came out later, they admitted it. They were thrilled, jubilant. So presumably they knew about it, they didn't tell anybody, and they may even have been responsible for it. And that justified the Iraq invasion, the invasion of Iraq in 2002. I think it was about 5 or 6 months after the events of the 11th of September 2001. Anyway, guys, that's my story for today. Really is fascinating watching Dmitry Medvedev make these huge utterances. Only time will tell whether or not the Russians do assassinate Zelensky, but what they have done through Dmitry Medvedev's utterances is get the world on the edge of its seat. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for watching. Goodbye. God bless you. And we'll speak again soon. Cheerio.